Views and opinions expressed within the following program are solely those of the individual. These views and opinions do not necessarily represent those of Shaw TV.
Hey Calgary, I'm Kevin Chorney. Today's May 30th, and this is Calgary Now. It's been a busy few months for Calgary Now, and it's time to wrap it up for the season. Over the course of this season, we've explored everything from polyamory to hip-hop, and today we have the Rant Pack on hand to hash out their opinion on topics we feel are worth discussing. On deck, we're talking poverty. It's a huge issue, and we've done 3 separate shows to address related issues, talking about affordable housing and homelessness. There are many plans, organizations, and political commitment from all levels working to reduce poverty, yet it's still a problem that affects many citizens. Back in January, we talked about politics. Specifically how progressive left-leaning parties are able to make headway here in Alberta. Many people aren't happy with the representation they currently have and the system that puts parties in power. And finally, the taxi situation here in Calgary. While we didn't get a chance to do the episode we wanted on it, it's a discussion definitely worth having. You're more than welcome to join the conversation. Shoot us a tweet at Calgary Now Show or dial us up at 403-539-6710. Stay with us.
Hey everyone, this is Justine from the Rant Pack, and today we are talking poverty. Now, poverty is a huge issue, not just for the people who are living in poverty, but for the city in which the poor reside, the province, the federal government, and even the taxpayers. There are hundreds of agencies in the city that address the unique issues that affect those living in poverty to alleviate the financial burden of housing and making it easier to access essential services like dental, health, and food. Those who are focused on lifting people out of poverty know that this disjointed approach by agencies relying on funding from various levels of government isn't the solution. Police, nurses, social workers, all who are on the front line know that an overall strategy with committed funding is not only necessary, but it's also cost effective. This season on Calgary Now, we spoke of the economic impact of poverty, homelessness, and affordable housing, all relating back to poverty, and the conversation is not over.
Big thanks to Justine for setting up the topics for us. I've got the Rant Pack here. I'm sure their faces are all familiar. We've got Adam Henry right here, Derek McEwen, Ike Kenzo, and Julie Vincent. Guys, let's get right into it. Now, the topic is homelessness. The city's looking to spend $52 million. Should it be spent on homelessness?
That's a really massive question. I'm going to start this by saying I just drove up here via 14th Street, which was a catastrophe. So in the moment, I'm saying $52 million, please spend it on that street for me. It was very frustrating. But with homelessness, it's a really interesting question because the reasons for homelessness are so diverse. I'm not exactly sure whether, first of all, that's enough money, and whether or not there could be a solution or two that would address all of the reasons people are living on the streets.
Is homelessness an issue you can throw money at to make it go away?
I don't necessarily think so. I think that money has just been thrown at it for so long. Doing research for this topic in the show and the one we did before, I didn't find anything that I liked to address homelessness. I just haven't found anything that works. I mean, Vancouver tried the, have free needles and come in and shoot up. Most of those people were homeless or working homeless or the working poor. I just didn't think it was appropriate. I didn't agree with it. As far as the $52 million in and of itself is concerned, I know that's an unexpected windfall and we're debating how we should spend it. The compound interest on that, can't we just save that until we have a lot more money? We're already going to pay this property tax. Why can't we just save that until we have more money for something bigger that will affect the whole city?
If you can find an account that will pay interest, that would be amazing. I don't know if the $52 million can really go straight to homelessness. I mean, I think the number of issues, like you said, over and over we've discussed, there's a huge amount of issues, many of which are entirely outside of our jurisdiction as a municipality. The $52 million is coming in. You know, you have Rick Bell versus Nahid Nenshi going back and forth about who should get what and what the income level should be and all of that. I don't know if just sort of dropping it and saying, okay, here, go and do this. I think it would be interesting to do something like the 2012 arts approach, where you sort of offer out micro grants, micro loans, small grants to organizations to help augment whatever they're doing. So is there a program that could be developed at the drop-in center? Is there a program that could be developed at the YWCA?
But how much do those programs, the development of those programs is expensive?
But you apply for those and you get a grant of, you make it small programs. Small programs will be meaningful at a grassroots level for $1,000, $2,000, $4,000.
Well, let's talk about one of those issues then.
I don't know that. For me, I think we get caught up in all the problems that exist, all the compound issues that make up the homelessness problem in Calgary. I think if we tackle one of those, $52 million is a lot of money. Let's not forget, it can go a long way towards one program you're saying. So let's say we could be talking about inner city youth or something. If we develop a program with that $52 million, that's something that you could have success in, I feel like, with that kind of funding. So for homelessness, you're not going to solve everything, but I think if you set goals, realistic goals, and you pursue those, you can do something. I don't like getting caught up in or bogged down with issues. Then you get nothing done if you just worry too much about all the problems.
But if you do small things,
Let me jump in here for a sec, because you're right, small things are really important, but why people are homeless, the reasons people are homeless are so vast. There are people who choose that lifestyle, bizarrely enough, but they do. Sure. Rarely true enough, but in some cases those are youth where the situation at home is intolerable. So to live on the street with a bunch of people that accept you, yes, it's a horrible lifestyle in relation to the lifestyle I live. I wouldn't live that way, but I don't know what it's like to go home and know that it's a catastrophe. There are people on the streets who are there because of mental illness, certainly. They're there because of addictions. And some there was a fella that he's passed away now, his name was Ron Beard, and who had been an engineer with Gulf Canada, I understand, and he said at one point he ended up, his feet were frozen off, and anyway, there were all these questions that were put to him, and he said, I choose this lifestyle. I have an addiction, I'm an alcoholic, I choose this. So where we're talking about dropping all this money, we're assuming that everybody on the streets is aware that they're homeless, doesn't want to be homeless, and will accept this help. So determining how these programs are going to function.
A few things you touched on, I want to touch on though as well. You mentioned drugs, addiction, alcohol addiction, mental health issues. These are things that the Calgary Poverty Reduction Initiative has touched on. Yeah. Now, $52 million thrown at something like, you mentioned youth. Sure, I get it. What about the addiction aspect of things? I mean, we did the show previously, and it's astounding. An addiction rate of literally about 90%. Yeah. To me, is that not the answer? Start right there. Start with that addiction.
Perhaps the causes of addiction could also look too. Before then, you can't put the cart before the horse, I feel like. And also, like, there are a lot of ways we can solve the problem. I don't know about loans per se, because the arts and poverty are two very different things. And microloans have had success in the third world, where I think the context in Calgary might work out a little bit differently. I don't know how much a program or an individual, for that matter, could do with a small $5,000 loan, how they could pay it back.
Okay, here would be an example. Say it's not a loan, say it's a grant. Say they set it up as a granting organization, like 2012 was for the arts, but the drop-in center goes, we want $5,000 so we can buy a whole bunch of socks.
Well, it doesn't get people off the street, it keeps their feet warm.
But it keeps their feet warm, and socks are one of the most valued possessions by homeless people. And there was an article that came out about this in Calgary about 3 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago. But small projects like this, where you start to acclimate or reacclimate people into sort of a day-to-day living. I mean, you could spend $52 million on affordable housing. That would be great. But if it ends up being, a slum, there's no point on it.
Well, I just think all this debate about the money too, and should it go to homelessness in our current discussion, is just like, is it going to turn into another giant government boondoggle where the people at the top are getting most of this money, and the people at the bottom aren't getting any?
Yeah, applying for grants is a complicated process.
And who judges who gets them?
Exactly.
And like, there are people who are the working poor who are staying not necessarily at the homeless center downtown, but affordable housing that is paid for by the government and subsidized, not entirely, but just subsidized.
Real quickly, is homelessness still a prevalent issue in Calgary because people are simply apathetic?
Every major city in the world.
Derek, your 2 cents? We're going to jump to the next topic real quick. Yeah?
Yeah.
I don't think it's because of apathy, no. I wouldn't say that.
I think that the issue is just so complex, and it's so, where do you go in? What place do you go in?
That's where the
apathy
start? Comes from.
And I agree. I don't think it's apathy. I think it's just, oh my God, where do we start?
Fair enough. The next topic is politics. Let's jump right into it.
While many Canadians can't imagine living anywhere but in a democracy, low voter turnouts in all areas of the country are the norm. Back in January, Calgary Now spoke with representatives of left-leaning parties on the provincial and federal level to discuss the challenges that they face gaining ground in Conservative territory. While many residents, whether they vote or not, are unhappy with the status quo, it's difficult for them to find a party to really get behind, as there seems to be a disconnect between voters and party platforms. Coupled with voting systems that don't accurately represent the will of the people, it's not difficult to see why voter turnout is so low. So, what's the answer? Do we do away with the parties, come up with a new voting system? Whatever the answer, it won't be easy to radically uproot what Canadians are used to.
Okay, guys, we heard what Justine had to say. You think, is it possible that Calgarians are just so comfortable living the standard of life that they're living in Calgary that to them, to a lot of citizens, politics, voting, it's become irrelevant?
I wouldn't say that at all. I blame the politicians. That's their job. Politics for politicians. People have their day-to-day jobs that they go to every day. I don't know. I don't know what happened to charisma. I think we can make a lot of change. I think in Calgary, I would say the politicians are more comfortable versus the citizens. If you have a really gung-ho politician, we had one, Jack Layton. I'm not an NDP supporter, but you can see the change that he brought about over years of work, and only at the end of his life was he able to become the official opposition. Though he never reached, he never became prime minister, but he had an effect on Canadian politics as a whole. And I think that's what, I guess, Alberta politics is missing at this level right there. That kind of charisma, that kind of drive, to get to the people, to talk about the issues that may go over other people's heads. It's your job. That's what you're there to do. That's what I feel
to
is
get people
really
excited,
lacking.
is what you're saying.
Or even
involved.
Just even to the level where they care, would do it. Right.
I mean, it's staggering, right? The Calgary, the Centre by-election, 30% voter turnout.
Okay, but here's the deal with Calgary Centre. Okay, that's such a frustrating thing, because the popular vote and who won that election are completely different things. Same thing at the federal level, same thing that just happened in BC. Who people want to be in and who people get because of the first past the post system, that's a really interesting question. In terms of Calgary Centre, and as we're talking about apathy here, I think there is apathy because of this first past the post thing, and people are aware that I want this person, but I know this other person's going to get in because they happen to be blue, and so people go, whatever. Why should I go vote?
So we're talking about big time electoral reform.
Yeah, it's frustrating to know that there's a candidate who's really excellent, who is really committed, who is charismatic, and who hasn't got a hope because they're not blue.
Okay, now speaking as probably, just as a guess, the only Conservative on this panel.
Probably.
Yes, heart is blue,
They
whatever.
put me in the middle for a reason.
Yes, I know, exactly. I'm as far away from Julie as I can get. Yeah. The thing is,
I'm not that red.
When I listen to the Jack Laytons, or, I'm sorry, I don't know who the NDP leader is in Alberta, or the what is probably going to be Justin Trudeau on a federal level. I still don't know who. I think it's Dave Taylor is the head of the Alberta Provincial Liberal Party. Regardless, they all just said, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, and there's nothing in the portfolio, the syllabus, that says how they're going to do it. They just magically have this money that we're all going to pay for. The Blues have a plan. It might not be the best plan, but it's a plan, and that is why I vote blue. I can vote blue and say this is their policies, this is what they're going to do.
It's a culture, we're used to it. So I'm going to disagree with you on there. It's not just that they have a policy.
The point of a panel
and with you, the first past the post system, that's what we have. It's beating a dead horse when I hear the argument, let's change the system. Other systems, they're not perfect either. What mixed proportional representation or proportional representation. When you have those systems, it becomes the party politics take over, because now you have proportional representation within the party, but it becomes more than it is more pronounced than it is now.
There's no way it can be more, because one of the reasons that there's so much apathy is because if you live in Calgary for any length of time, you were born and bred to go, okay, this is going Conservative. Then you have Joan Crockett talking about how ethical the party is in her tweets, because they let two people go out of caucus and fired a chief of staff, and claiming that as like a badge of, yes, we did great.
Party completely absolved
I'm not
blame
saying
those
that.
who passed the wrong.
I'm not saying that. But I agree. I agree with
leadership.
Well,
exactly
if it's burden of leadership, Harper's been in for how long? This is clearly rot, whatever. But in terms of what you were talking about earlier, in terms of being charismatic, in terms of connecting with the people, that's what Nenshi did. That's why he got in. That's why he came from fifth. That's why he came from fifth place and came in and won in a landslide.
But he also had a
plan.
He had a plan.
Absolutely.
And he's trying to institute that plan as much as he can.
No, for sure. And you can have a plan and you can be charismatic, which Nenshi has proven. But what people want isn't Joan Crockett talking about how ethical they are by letting 2 people go from caucus and firing a chief of staff. They want Nenshi doing something who's creative and interesting.
But if it were that easy, though, we'd see more left-leaning politicians win elections.
I'm not necessarily. I don't know if Nenshi. I mean,
they need to change their message. Obviously, if you don't connect, look at yourself first. Instead of looking at the system, look at yourself. What are you doing wrong? How have other people succeeded? Even the Conservatives, they came out of nowhere when they first got in 40 some odd years ago. 45 years ago. So look at the success of others and don't be jealous of. I'm not a Conservative, but I'm not going to be mad at them for their success.
Yeah, somebody who was in power before the Conservatives and they screwed up, so then the Conservatives got in. Somebody else can do it too. You just need the right shift.
So what's the bigger issue? Is the bigger issue voter apathy, or is it the system itself?
Okay, now I'm just jumping in again for this part. I actually can't stand voter apathy. I hate it. If Canada were to adopt, and maybe just in Alberta, if you don't get your tax credit back if you don't vote.
Love that. I like that one a lot.
I do too, and I'm totally on your page there.
You have
Generally, the right to vote is not something that people in many other countries enjoy. So to not vote, in my mind, it's heinous. And I'm just going to go here for a second. Women in this country haven't had the vote for a long time. We were chattel property until the 50s. And so I don't mean to bring this into a gender issue, but for women not to vote is also heinous in another way.
Almost worse, do you think?
I don't know if it's almost worse. I just think it's such a slap in the face to who went before and how hard those people fought that people have the vote anyways in this country. It's a right that I am totally on your page on that. When people say, I can't be bothered, it really bugs me.
Well, and the biggest excuse is I'm not informed. I'm not informed. And I'm not buying that anymore because you have so many avenues to be informed.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone's got a smartphone nowadays.
I think
the internet is very friendly.
There's other ways to exercise like your democratic rights. It's not just voting. You can protest, you can lobby, you can do other things. Because sometimes my writing is Stephen Harper. Like he's Calgary South.
Apologies.
So you're gonna tell me I'm a bad Canadian for not going out to vote when it's a foregone conclusion who's gonna win?
Okay,
and
this brings me to
the system though. It's the politicians who vote split. So NDP, Liberals, whatever have you, they split the vote. So there's absolutely no chance for an alternative choice. So I'm not saying I'm apathetic. I usually go out and vote, but I wouldn't consider it a heinous crime or a sin not to. Because really, you're gonna look me in the eyes and tell me that, your vote would have changed. It wouldn't have changed anything.
So your bigger beef is with vote splitting.
My biggest beef is with the people who are supposed to be the politicians, the people who are supposed to be the flag bearers of a particular movement. You have to galvanize the population. Sorry, that's what you get paid to do. That's the burden you chose to carry when you became a politician. That's what I feel. So if the system is the way it is, no voter elections is perfect. You're not going to find one that's perfect. If the one's perfect, it's probably going to be inefficient or expensive or this or that. We have what we have right now. It's going to be ridiculous to try to change it. So
it's called democratic deadlock.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it is. You have just to use the United States as an example.
Sure.
They had the Democrats have control of one house and the Republicans have control of another, and you run into that exact problem. And also on your saying that your vote wouldn't count, they actually did a study on the last Bush-Kerry election when he first got in. It was 232 votes in the entire country. I know the Electoral College is very, very different than the Canadian system.
You're talking about Florida, right?
Yes, exactly. The hanging Chad, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But the thing is that one vote actually can make a difference.
Look at the election in, I think it was in Ontario. It might have been Nova Scotia. I can't remember off the top of my head. But 19 votes.
Yeah, 19 votes separated, and the one guy who had 19 votes.
And the first past the post system in the federal election, well, I don't think one vote. That's a hard. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's hard to convince. Let's say like the youth out there who are.
Okay, so
Beach Lake, Quebec was 1% away from separating, 51 to 49.
That was a strange question, though. They're going to ask for the right to talk about.
Two questions. There are two things to pose, although I'm guessing this is probably getting pretty tight. One. If everybody actually voted for who they wanted to vote for, and didn't feel they were tied to parties.
Yes, I don't like that system either.
If they actually voted for the representative, and I think I've said this on the show before, they voted for the representative that represented their community, their riding, that would change things. That would be a huge difference. Second, just to muddy the waters a little bit, when you're being asked to vote for a senator in waiting in this province, they spend millions of dollars on this, even though it's complete and utter just ridiculousness. And then you see what's happening with Duffy and Wallen. Why would you have any faith in the electoral system? And as much as I decry the apathy of voters, if you're a 19-year-old kid who's reading the Globe and Mail, going to university, and you're reading about how Duffy's done this and Wallen's done this and Rob Ford has done this and whatever, why are you even going to bother to look up and educate yourself?
This is such a great panel. You guys, a lot of excellent points of view. Unfortunately, that is all the time we have to discuss politics. I'm sure we can probably go on for hours, frankly. Back to Justine for our next topic.
Calgary Now wanted to do an episode about the cab situation here in Calgary earlier on this year, particularly after hearing about a new app available on Androids and iPhones called FastCab. Not surprisingly, though, they weren't able to get the necessary players on the show. The major cab companies declined, the city had to pull out due to a pending review on the app, and cab drivers were afraid to speak out. The latest news on the cab front is that FastCab app has partnered with Delta. Associated and Checker drivers are forbidden to use the app, but Checker is working on developing their own app technology. Yet, the issues that plagued drivers and patrons are still not yet resolved.
All right, we're going to jump into cabs. Who wants to go first on cabs?
I will go first on cabs.
Take it away.
The cab system in this city is so incredibly screwed up, and nothing illustrates that better than the app that came out where you could go onto the app, get a cab, and Checker, who between them and Associated own pretty much a monopoly on cabs, came out and tried to have it struck down and release their own app and whatever, and punished cab drivers for using the independent third-party app that was done. And I think that's indicative of the nature of this industry. It's kind of like watching an old mob movie from the 70s and the construction companies, and how they just owned everything.
That's a great analogy. It's true. So why is it, though? Why are they so scared of this third-party application? I just don't get it. To me, it makes zero sense. I mean, they even levied a lawsuit. Why? It's going to connect cabs with fares.
Because it takes it out of the hands of the mob, essentially, I think.
Okay, but the way the taxi system works, though, I mean, these drivers, they drive. They pay the flag bearer, the multiple cab companies in town, $300 to $500 a week. These drivers are paying. So these guys are getting their money regardless. I mean,
at least.
I hear you on the, I love the reference, 70s mobsters, but the money's still coming in regardless. I mean, where's their beef with this? Somebody's got to help me out.
I read somewhere that they thought it was dangerous that the taxi drivers would be checking their phones because it's texting. Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah, but then they go and they release their own app afterwards. So it's like the problem. I think the problem is it doesn't go through them, so they lose that power. And so you go through the third-party booker, and you got to pay money to be a booker. Yeah. They probably paid a lot of money to get that license to, tell cabs where to go around. So yeah, I agree with everybody here. This cab system is ridiculous because I go to Chestermere often. I remember, so if you're in Chestermere, you got to take a Chestermere cab into Calgary, but the cab for Chestermere can't bring you back. So like that cab has to go back empty back into Chestermere. Because so everything here, it just doesn't make any sense. We're turning into kind of like old kind of Quebec kind of style, like their political. So it's gonna take a long time to change this. I think if the people got involved and the people really rallied and the people wanted something to happen here, we could make a difference. I think they want to add, 50 cabs only for Stampede? Like that's going to make a big difference. It's going to do anything. So.
And I'm not sure whether the people, if Calgarians did rally, it would make any difference, because here comes this guy with this app that he's developed, which is a great app, which is beneficial to the cab drivers, and that's one of the people saying, hey, the system doesn't work. Here's a different way to do it, a better way, maybe more client-oriented or customer-oriented, and the cab companies are like, hell no.
I mean, isn't the biggest problem dispatch? How many times do you call the cab and it's busy? It's the biggest problem.
Now, on the original show we did of this, I actually don't take cabs very often, but for this upcoming show, I did leave my truck at home and took some cabs. And I took them to downtown and then really late at night back home again, just to see what it was like. First of all, regarding your comment, if I ever get in a cab and he's on the phone, he's hanging up or I'm getting out. Or I'm not paying once I get home if he doesn't hang up. Either or. I hate that. Because I don't do it. Nobody else is allowed to do it. Why they do it all the damn time.
And it's rude.
And it's rude. It's very rude. Exactly. So I did take some stuff, and I was actually just to be on the cab driver side, not necessarily the dispatch side, because I don't know enough about that to comment on it. Sure. I would just say that I was talking to this cab. He gets 2 oil changes a month in his Toyota Prius. That is 12,000 kilometers in a month that he's doing. And these guys have expenses, and they're not millionaires. They're making a pretty good living, these cab drivers, and I will admit that. But still, the just to switch topics, I guess, to who's running it, they're like these shadowy figures behind the scenes, and they have the one PR representative that comes out and says this stuff. But who are these shadowy figures telling the public representative what to say?
It was pretty interesting that they all banded together quite quickly as companies to speak with a united voice. I think there may be a little something on this shadowy.
I totally agree. If you speak out, you're going to get fired. You know, just like the doctor's thing, where the doctor speaks out and he gets reprimanded for going against AHS. There's probably some internal memo somewhere that says if your cab driver speaks out and you're in charge of that cab driver, he gets suspended first and fired second.
Well, then does this mean that maybe it's time that the city gets involved and helps these cab drivers at least build an association of drivers to potentially unionize eventually?
Look at, I mean, and again, I believe this came up in our taxi conversation we had earlier in the season. But you look at, New York, there's a Bill of Rights, a rider's Bill of Rights, right? They will not talk on the phone. They will take the route that you want. They will not, they will not run you around, but, it happens. But the city's sort of working on this. The city's saying, we've got this Bill of Rights that we're sort of working on. The cab companies are fighting it tooth and nail.
Bet they are.
And then you have these other options that come up, like the app, to book something. That makes it more profitable for cabbies who make, some make a good living, some don't. And in terms of the licensing, they're paying $300 to $500 a week for the lease to the cab company. That doesn't constitute what they've paid to the person who they bought the license from, because there's a huge black market for these licenses. And cabbies will be completely open about this, that they bought it from a cousin or a friend or whatever for insane amounts of money.
I heard it was $100,000, but am I the only one who's not bothered by a cab driver on a Bluetooth talking? Like, I don't want him talking to me. Like, just go and do it.
I do.
You know what? It doesn't bother me. I'll be honest, it doesn't bother me. If he's on a Bluetooth, that's fine. As long as I'm getting to where I need to get to in a safe manner or whatever.
It's fine. If he's off or distracted, then I have a problem. I know these guys work long hours, and if you just glued on the road like this and driving, I'd be more afraid of the glazed taxi driver.
When you get a client in your car, and you are going to be paid by them and potentially tipped by them, and you have no communication with them, and you act like they're not there, and you're yakking away, and I'm not making any comment on anything other than a lot of these people come from away. And there's a lot of reasons people drive a cab. Some of it is just the fact of being highly educated elsewhere, and they can't use their degree here. But the person that they have on the other end of the line speaks their language, which is often, not a common Canadian language. You know what I mean? So you're sitting in a car listening to somebody rattle away, and as much as it's interesting to listen to a language that you don't understand, it's very alienating when you're paying the person for driving you around.
It's a service. Okay, I get it.
It's a service. And I get it. Yes, maybe if it's a long cab drive, if they don't need to speak to you for 20 or 40 minutes, fine, but if they're taking me from where I live in South Calgary downtown, it's a 12-minute ride. Come on, ask, hello, how are you, nice to meet you. They're rude, and the level of rudeness in the Calgary industry here is pervasive. It's pervasive in terms of how they drive, how they at the airport, they're very aggressive in the driving bays there.
This topic is not done.
It needs a revolution.
Thanks everybody for joining us tonight. You know what? It's been a great season. We do hope you keep the conversation going. Facebook, Twitter. If you have a topic you want us to discuss, by all means, drop us a line. We'll see you in the fall. Take care.